Washington, D.C. is abuzz with theories about the identity of the anonymous senior White House official who wrote a Trump-bashing op-ed in the New York Times, with numerous names put forward as possible suspects. The article describes the president as impetuous, adversarial, petty and ineffective, and says the author is part of an organized resistance whose goal is to preserve our democratic institutions while thwarting President Trump's more misguided impulses until he is out of office. The Times' description of the writer as a senior official could encompass anyone among hundreds of White House staff, given that there are more than 1,000 Senate-confirmed positions alone. But sleuths have been honing in on one word: Lodestar. Scroll down for video. This term, armchair language, analysts pointed out, is a favorite of Vice President Mike Pence, who regularly uses it in speeches. Yet others suggested the word, which means the guiding star of a ship, could have been deliberately included to throw journalists off the scent. If the use of lodestar was not a trick, others said, then perhaps suspicion could fall on Pence's speechwriter, Stephen Ford. One major clue about the writer's identity appeared to have been dropped by the Times itself in a tweet, which described how he and others had been working together behind the scenes of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. A Times spokeswoman later told Business Insider that the pronoun was a mistake that shouldn't be read as a tip-off. Senior opinion editors know the identity of the official, as we pointed out in our editor's note, Danielle Haas said in an email. The tweet was drafted by someone who is not aware of the author's identity, including the gender, so the use of he was an error. Trump has called the op-ed gutless and suggested its author could be guilty of treason. Share this article. Share. He has already ordered loyal aides to identify the sources of Woodward's book, and this probe could well be extended to encompass the Times article, CNN reported. It is hard to tell from the piece what level of access the official had to the president. Although it describes meetings with the president, it steers clear of offering specific information that could point to the level of the writer's security clearance. The author also fudges their political allegiance, saying they were not part of a resistance of the left and supported some of Trump's policies. Short on clues, many have turned to the long roster of officials who have reportedly criticized Trump or been the subjects of his ire. Names mentioned include James Mattis, John Kelly, Jeff Sessions and Dan Coats. Others made the seemingly implausible suggestion that the writer could have come from within the Trump family, pointing the finger at Ivanka or her husband Jared Kushner, and even Melania. A betting website is now offering odds on the identity of the author, with Pence leading the running at 2-3. Who wrote the New York Times Trump resistance op-ed? Mike Pence. Sleuths honed in on the word lodestar, a favorite of the vice president. Recently, he described the late John McCain as a lodestar for restoring honor to public life and our national dialogue. Others suggested the word, which means the guiding star of a ship, could have been deliberately included to throw journalists off the scent. This was the verdict of a senior White House official who spoke to DailyMail.com. He said suspicion is not focused on him or anyone in his office following a frank discussion among the VP's senior staff. Furthermore, Pence has never criticized Trump in public, and writing the op-ed would almost certainly scupper any future bid for high office. Stephen Ford if the use of Lodestar was not a trick, others said, then perhaps suspicion could fall on Pence's speechwriter. James Mattis, the Secretary of Defense, despite having been a Trump favorite, has repeatedly sounded at odds with the commander-in-chief while discussing NATO, Russia, and military strategy. During one episode in Bob Woodward's recent book, Trump questioned the utility of U.S. early warning systems in Alaska to identify a nuclear attack from North Korea. Mattis is said to have schooled him. "We're doing this in order to prevent World War III," he reportedly said. The Pentagon chief is said to have told colleagues after the incident that Trump had the mental ability of a 5th or 6th grader. On Tuesday, Mattis denied the account, saying in a statement of his own, "The contemptuous words about the president attributed to me in Woodward's book were never uttered by me, or in my presence." John Kelly, the White House chief of staff, was also quoted in Woodward's book as having called Trump an idiot. "It's pointless to try to convince him of anything. He's gone off the rails," he allegedly said. "We're in crazy town. I don't even know why any of us are here. This is the worst job I've ever had." Kelly denied making the claims in a statement put out by the White House. "The idea that I ever called the president is not true. In fact, it's exactly the opposite," he said. This is both a pathetic attempt to smear people close to President Trump and distract from his many successes. Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, has a motive, having been repeatedly barracked by Trump for recusing himself from the Russia investigation. Just this week he let loose on him for charges the Department of Justice brought against 2 sitting Republican members in recent days, complaining that the indictments handicapped the incumbents and jeopardized the GOP's standing in the House. The president also compared Sessions unfavorably to FBI director he fired, Lion James Comey, saying they'd become martyrs to the very same lawmakers who previously despised them after resisting orders from Trump. This week, the Attorney General also found out the president had called him mentally retarded, according to Woodward. Trump denied having said this. Dan Coats, the director of national intelligence, was also put forward as a candidate, having previously veered from the Trump line. Told of the president's plan to invite Vladimir Putin to the White House, Coats said that is going to be special, a comment that angered Trump. He later clarified his comments, made during an interview at the Aspen Institute's Security Forum in Colorado, by saying his response was in no way meant to be disrespectful or criticize the actions of the president. Trump drew heavy criticism from both Republicans and Democrats over his summit last Monday in Helsinki, Finland, with Putin, when he seemed reluctant to blame Russia for meddling in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Donegan, the White House counsel, is planning to leave the White House in the fall so may not fear the consequences of being exposed as the author. He has also clashed with Trump in the past. This includes declining his order to fire Robert Mueller, who is overseeing an investigation into alleged Russian interference that the president describes as a witch hunt. Indeed, McGahn has risked the president's anger by spending 30 hours in interviews with Mueller's team on 3 separate occasions in under a year. As with all the theories about the identity of the author, this one relies on conjecture rather than any solid facts. Melania or Ivanka. The First Lady was another, unlikely, candidate. Twitter commenters noted she had been accused of sending several coded messages expressing opposition to her husband's policies. This included wearing a jacket saying "I really don't care, do you?" when visiting hostels for migrant children. Ivanka, meanwhile, has previously said she would work to get her voice heard through her father, but has seemingly failed to do so, particularly in the case of family separations, which she was vehemently opposed to. Her husband, Jared, is a senior advisor and also could be involved, some have said. That said, the idea the writer came from within the Trump family seems unlikely.